Becky here. Welcome to or welcome back to my channel. I am here to do another tag video. We are doing the end of summer book tag. So I know summer is over and it is officially fall now, and I did the Finally Fall book tag for 8 days leading up to the start of fall on September 23rd. Now it is September 29th as I'm recording this. But I saw this end of summer book tag on Heather's channel over at Bookables and decided that I wanted to do this tag as a way of doing my summer wrap up. I do not normally do monthly wrap-ups or TBRs because I don't stick to a TBR, and I only read 5 to maybe 8 books a month. If that's like a lot for me, 8 books would be a great month for me. So I just don't do TBRs or wrap-ups a lot, but I wanted to wrap up my reading months for, I'm considering the summer, June, July, and August. All the answers to these questions in this book tag are going to be books that I have read this summer, except for a few other books like anticipated releases and stuff. So obviously I haven't read those yet. Or books I wish I had read during the summer. I will talk about the books I read this summer in relation to the questions, and then do a bit of a wrap up for those that did not fit into any answers for these questions. So, end of summer book tag. Summer camp. Which book had your new favorite character? And I actually had 2 romance books that I read this summer. I really loved the couple featured in Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, Macy and Elliot. At the beginning of the book, you see them as adults in their late 20s and coming back together after not talking to each other for like over a decade. And there's flashback chapters talking about how they met as preteens and their relationship through that and their teenage years. And then there's this gap, and we don't know why there's this gap. And then the present timeline where they are seeing different people and kind of just struggling with, why did our relationship break up? And are we meant to be together now or not? Elliot is my new favorite book boyfriend. He was just so amazing and respectful. He was a really interesting character. He meets her after she has lost her mom, and her dad are buying this like vacation home. So she's going through this great loss and grief. And Elliot comes from a family with a mom and dad. There's 4 kids. And then another baby is born like quite later on after the older 4. So he doesn't understand her loss of a parent or a loved one that's that close to them. But he just sits and he listens and he says, like, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to not talk about it. But he's also like, but I'm here if you do want to talk about it. And he's just very loving and understanding. He's just really sweet and maybe a little too mature for his age. But that's why he's fictional. And I just really liked them and their relationship. And I love that story, 5 out of 5. And that I actually read as a buzzword for June, which was other. And then I also really liked The Love Con. This is a story of this Black woman who is in her 20s. I think like mid-20s, I can't remember. And she is part of a competition show, and she is doing costume designs for like comic expos and stuff. Comic-Con, things like that. And her best friend since high school, her name is Kenya and his name is Cameron, and they do these shows together. He lost his mom, actually, when he met Kenya, and he was living with an alcoholic father. So a very difficult childhood, and look at this pattern. I don't like the light. How do I make this shadow not so bad? I'm sorry, I'm upstairs just trying to get this done when I have time. And I could take this off, but then I can't see. But Cameron meets Kenya at a very difficult time in his life, and she just becomes his safe person, and they become that for each other. Her family is Black and his family is white. So there is a lot going on in this story, and at the end of the competition, it is the like final showdown, her and one other person, and they get to go home. They've been away in a different state this whole time doing this competition, and they get to go home and work with a partner to build the last final costume, which is going to be 2 costumes, and it's going to be like a couple's costume type thing. And she picks Cameron, and they're not dating, but the other person, he is like, I'm going to be doing this with my husband, and they're all like, it's going to be a cute romantic thing. And this one judge is really bitchy and just really doesn't like Kenya and is always trying to make her slip up in what she says or does and trying to portray her as the angry black woman. And Kenya refuses to fall for this trap. And Kenya is way stronger than I ever would have been in the situations that she is put through with this one judge. And the judge's name is Becky or Rebecca. So that is awesome. They call her at one point Bitchy Becky. And I was like, great, my name finally shows up in a book and I'm the bitch. So that's awesome. Kenya is like, yeah, my partner Cameron. And they're like, oh, is that like your boyfriend or whatever? And she's like, yeah, of course. But they're not actually dating. So it is a fake dating. And it's called the Love Con because fake dating plus conventions. So that was really fun. And the boyfriend in this, he is kind of like Elliot. So my two new crushes, Elliot and Cameron. And he's just very loving and supportive. And he's just always there for Kenya. Supports her in everything that she is doing to the point where her parents question it and think that she's taking advantage of Cameron because the parents kind of helped raise Cameron a little bit and are very protective of him as a son as well. And they're like, Kenya, you're just taking advantage of him and his kindness towards you. And he has his own life and he owns a shop where they actually do builds for things like Comic Expo, Comic-Con, different conventions and stuff. They build these like costumes and that's his job and it's his business. And they're like, you're taking away from his business and you're doing all this stuff and you're leaning on him too much. That's how loving and supportive he is and the difficulties of their relationship. It is really interesting and I just love Cameron. He was a really great fake and real boyfriend and friend to Kenya and I just really loved their dynamics. So those are my two new favorite couples and I wish we could all just hang out together and do a couple things together with Macy and Elliot and Cameron and Kenya and Becky and Sebastian. So that was a lot for question number 1. But question number 2, summer vacation. What was your favorite book of the summer? So I loved Book Lovers by Emily Henry. And I know the big book this year by Emily Henry was Happy Place. I didn't get to that this summer, but I did get to it in September. So I'm not talking about Happy Place in this video, but Book Lovers, I just really loved the dynamics in it. I can't remember main characters' names. The only reason why I remember the other ones was because I have them written down, but I neglected to write down the ones for Book Lovers. But again, I just loved that it's kind of seen, I think it's a grumpy kind of love story. And the main character, the female lead in Book Lovers, really doubts a lot of things about herself and has pushed things to the side a lot. She is a book agent, but she's always wanted to be an editor, but she turned down the job of editor because it wouldn't make enough money for her to help support her sister. And there's this whole sister relationship dynamic going on in this book. And a lot of people didn't like it because of that. They're like, it's more about her as a sister, kind of overbearing bigger sister who's just trying to control life than it is about the romance between her and Charlie, I think is the guy's name. I love it because it's not just about the relationship between the man and the woman. It is family dynamics and stuff. And there's a little bit with him and his family and why he's in this small town and why her and her sister are visiting this small town that they're all happen to be in together. It's a little bit of, not rivals, a little bit kind of enemies to lovers. I just love that the male character, Charlie, I think, really supported her and she was always putting herself on the back burner because she just wanted everything to be perfect for her sister. Again, the mom is dead. Why is the mom dead in all of these stories? My mom is alive, so it's not like I'm connecting to it on that kind of level or anything like that. My mom is still very much alive right now. But she just wants to make everything perfect for her little sister. She's putting aside the dreams that she wants, thinking that she is giving everything up for her sister. And as long as her sister is happy, and she's just very much trying to control everyone else's life. And he steps in and he's like, no, like you deserve to be happy too. And you really see her passion for her job as an agent, a book agent. And people see her as a bitch because she's good at her job, basically. And he's like, no, you're good about your job and you're passionate about your job and you're passionate about the authors that you represent to the publishing people. You're their agent. You're trying to find them the best publishers. And he is a book editor. And he's like, you're so passionate about these books and these authors and what you're doing. And she's kind of helping him edit this book for this one author. So they work together editing. And he's like, you're really good at this and you should try to chase that dream. and become an editor yourself. So he's very much like supporting her in the role that she is in while also encouraging her to go for more. And I just really loved that passion that they both had for their jobs. I love reading books where there is a passion there for things, whether it is a career or it's more of like a hobby, like a side thing, like doing some kind of artistic thing, or it is their job. Sometimes those are connected, but yeah, or they're just passionate about something. And I love reading and watching movies and stuff about passion. So yeah. Book lovers loved it. Question number 3, Summer Rain, least favorite book. So I read A Very Typical Family. I read it as an audiobook. It wasn't very long, and there was some kind of like, Libby does this like big reads thing, and then there's like unlimited copies of a certain book and everyone can take it out and read it. So I took that one out, and I only had like 3 days left or something before that was going to end, that big read thing, and then all the copies would be taken down kind of thing. I don't know exactly how it works, but I was like, yeah, sure, let's listen to this. And it was just so boring and not very interesting. Like, it says A Very Typical Family. Yeah. So the mom dies. I'm seeing a theme. All my summer reads where the mom dies. This woman has to go back to the house that her mom was living in, that she is giving to her. There's 3 kids, and the 2 kids, the older kids, spent time in jail. She didn't do anything wrong, but she called the cops on them. And they ended up going to jail for this thing, and they haven't really spoken since then. And they all go to the house, and in order to inherit the house, all 3 of the kids need to show up together at the house, but the brother is missing. So you think like it's this big mystery thing. It's really not at all, and it all just kind of wraps up, and it's just more about the main character coming to terms with what she did as a teenager and calling the cops and having these hard conversations with her sister. And there's a little bit of a love story, but it's all just very like, I forgot I even read this book. Like, nothing happened. And it was like a very typical family, and I think it's kind of the point is like, it's not a very typical family because 2 of the siblings went to jail because of the 3rd sibling, but it was very typical and not interesting at all. So there was that book, and I also read a book called Murder at the Book Club, and that was a book I bought for my friend for her birthday, and then I buddy read it by ebook, and that one was on Scribd, and it wasn't that it was bad, it just, I talked about this in another one about a disappointing reads, it just wasn't as great as I was hoping it would be, I guess, but definitely A Very Typical Family, it just wasn't good. I read that one in July. So number 4, Last Days of Summer, a book you wish you'd read this summer. So I would say Happy Place, but I did manage to catch that one in September before fall officially started. So it was still technically summer according to the calendar, but according to the end of summer book tag, June, July, August, I didn't get in there. But the one I was hoping I could read was Meet Me at the Lake. And that is because my friend handed me that book in July. She read it and then she passed it over to me and said, here, it's okay. It's better in the beginning than at the end, but it's still a good read. And it's the kind of book I would like to start, like, Meet Me at the Lake. I want to go to the lake and read it. But I just haven't gotten to it yet, sadly. And when she gave it to me, just a lot was going on. There just wasn't the time to read along with all the other books I was already reading. So I don't even know what it's about. But sadly, I was unable to get to it. Assigned summer reading. Favorite classic of the summer. So I don't really read a lot of classics. But at the end of May, I did read The Outsiders. And then I did read in August for Gavin's Patreon Slagatha Sleuths. I read The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. So that one is People Are Dying. I think everyone knows The Outsiders. That one was written in, the 60s? And it's about a gang of boys and there's no parents. And there's like a rival gang from the other side of the tracks where all the rich people hang out, all the rich kids and stuff. And these are like the boys that are poor, and there's this rival gang. At the end of the book, there's like this big fight that happens. The ABC Murders, the guy, what's his name? I got another one. This one's coming up in October. This is our read called Halloween Party, and it's a Hercule Poirot mystery. So he is the detective, and he was getting these letters by this person who's like, you think you're so great and you're so smart and whatever, let's see if you can figure this out, and signed ABC. And then this woman dies, and her name starts with her first and last name both start with A, and she's found in the town and lives in the town of Andover. And then the second murder, their initials are BB, and it's in a town with the letter B, and so on and so forth through the alphabet. And the point of the Slagatha Sleuths is to solve the mystery before whoever the detective is, in this case, Hercule. So that one was good. It was a good time. So I'm going to consider that one a classic because it's Agatha Christie. Back to school shopping. Favorite book you obtained this summer? I read The Only One Left by Riley Sager in July, but I did not obtain that book. I listened to that as an audiobook from my library. I didn't buy a lot of books this summer and then read them this summer. And another graphic novel comic book type thing I got from my library from Hoopla, I think, was Eat and Love Yourself. That was in August, and that was also for an online book club, and so was The Only One Left. The First Day of School. First book you plan to read this autumn. So I am reading It's Not Supposed to Be This Way by Lisa TerKeurst, and it is all about dealing with disappointment. And I love Lisa TerKeurst. She's one of my favorite non-fiction Christian writers. She's really amazing. And I also want to be picking up as soon as possible 1000 Gifts by Anne Voskamp, another favorite author of mine. And then the one book I was trying to read this month is called The Bookshop of Second Chances. And I was reading that for the buzzword, which is game-related words, and I gave up and I DNF'd it, which is very sad because I really like the cover. It's really pretty, but it's just not working out for me. And then favorite subject. Which new releases are you most anticipating? So I don't really follow new releases. I don't know why. I just don't. I just see books in the bookstore and I'm like, hey, that sounds cool. And now that I'm a part of the bookish community, I just watch what other people are excited about and what they're talking about is being released and put those on my to be read pile online. If you go on Chapters, sometimes they have, which is the Canadian big bookseller like Barnes & Noble, Chapters Indigo website, they do like anticipated releases and you get like 500 extra bonus points if you pre-order these books. So every once in a while, I'll go through there and see what there is coming up. And one of the memoirs I'm kind of excited about is from Britney Spears. And I'm not like a huge Britney Spears fan, but I think it'd be really interesting to hear her memoir. I know there's been a lot of controversy about her and her dad and the way he's like controlled her life and stuff like that. And I just think it would be really interesting to hear her story because she was popular and coming on the scene when I was a teenager. And I did like her music as a teenager. I like memoirs. So I think Britney Spears would be good because I kind of like, I know her, but then when I grew out of that stage of listening to that kind of music at that age, I never followed her again. Like I didn't keep up with her, but I think it would be interesting. I probably won't buy it, but I'll listen to it. And then there's The Mystery Guest, which is like a follow-up. I don't know if it's a direct sequel or what, but from the book The Maid, and I really enjoyed The Maid last year when I listened to it. So I think that would be a good one because I enjoyed The Maid. And then John Stamos has a memoir coming out as well that I watched Full House. I liked him as Uncle Jesse in that, so I thought that would be really interesting as well. Matthew Perry came out with his memoir last year, and I still haven't read it yet, but I plan on reading it in November. Yeah, I'm just in a memoir mood, apparently. So that is what I'm anticipating coming up, and I think those all come out this year. But will I get to them this year? No, probably not. That's the wrap up on the end of summer book tag. And I'll just go through the other books that I read this summer as well. So in June, I read 6 books. Love in Other Words, The Devotion of Suspect X, which is a Japanese translated novel that I read for the Literally Dead book club. Murder at the Book Club. Everybody Fights, which is by Penn and I can't remember her name. Holderness, the Holderness family. Kim, maybe? And that is a book about marriage and fighting well, and really, really highly recommended if you are married. The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth or something like that, which I listened to for the Book Troop book club. And then The Other People by CJ Tudor I read for the buzzword once again, which was other. So Love in Other Words and The Other People. I'm not going to go into like huge depth about what these books are about. I really highly recommend Everybody Fights and Love in Other Words were my 2 favorite. And then The Devotion of Suspect X was really interesting because it is Japanese translated. Their mystery thriller seems to be a little bit different than what our mystery thriller is. And at the very beginning of that book, you know like who committed the crime. You're just seeing if the cops or the detectives can figure it out. And that story is very much like these stories like Sherlock and Watson. There's always like the detective and the buddy. That is very much like a Japanese version of that. Yeah, it was interesting because you like actually witnessed the murder happen in that. And so you're like, where is this gonna go? What's happening? Because you're following the perspective of the murderer, somebody who's helping them cover up the murder, and the detective. Or not the detective, but the friend of the detective. The soulmate was okay, and the other people, this guy's daughter gets kidnapped, but they say that the daughter and the wife have been murdered. That's what he is told, but he's like, no, my daughter is still alive. I saw her in the back of a van, and it's like been a few years, and he's trying to figure out where his daughter is. And it's this big, huge mystery, and who are these other people? In July, I also read 6 books. There was a few, like, with these numbers, I had read books that went over different months and stuff, so I just counted the ones that I read, like, fully in July. So, A Very Typical Family, which I talked about. When Breath Becomes Air, which is another memoir written by somebody as they're dying. And he was a neurosurgeon, and he got cancer. And I think including like lung cancer, and it was a really interesting read, and I read it at a very difficult time as we had a family member that was like dying on life support in the hospital, which was completely unexpected. Like, it wasn't this long drawn out illness that we were just waiting, like, when is it going to end? It was very unexpected. And when Breath Becomes Air, he had fought cancer and he was doing well and was in recovery, and then it came back and things went downhill. And then at the very end of the book, like the last half hour I'm listening to this, he's died. He finished the book, but there's a little bit at the end that his wife wrote and said, like, this is what it was like at the very, very end, and this is what happened, and this is what his story is about. And I was listening to that ending as I was going to pick up my husband and mother-in-law from the hospital after the loss of our family member. So it was a good/bad timing to read this book, but if you can handle the subject matter, it is really interesting to read about. But there is some descriptions of, as a doctor, what he went through in medical school and working on dead bodies, cadavers, and how they would have to cut them open and stuff for training. So yeah, if you can handle that subject matter. Very interesting. The Only One Left by Riley Sager, like I talked about. And that one is lots of twists and turns. Takes place between 2 timelines, which one is like the 20s and one is the 80s. But I felt like the atmosphere of the time it took place didn't really shine through. Besides the fact that they didn't have the technology that we have now with cell phones and stuff, it didn't really feel like, it didn't scream 80s. So if you're looking for that, you're not going to get that from there. But it's a good twisty thriller. If you like Riley Sager, you'll probably like this book. I read Spy Family, Volume 4. Really fun manga. Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson, which I am doing a separate video for that as well. I need to film the wrap-up for Grown, so that will be a really interesting one to talk about. And that one is by Tiffany D. Jackson and is about this woman, this girl, teenager, who wants to be a singer, and she gets wrapped up with kind of the wrong crowd with this older singer guy who is like, I want to mentor you and I want to take you on the road and you can be like my warm-up act and stuff. And there's a lot of just abuse that happens there. I would suggest looking up trigger warnings for that if that is something you need to do. And then I read Hairpin Bridge for Summerween by Taylor Adams. And I liked it. I didn't hate it, is what I should say. Everyone talked about how much they hated it. I didn't hate it. I thought it was fine, and it was twisty and turny, and like, it was very much Taylor Adams, in my opinion. And you can look at my Summerween vlog, which I'll link down below if you want to see my thoughts on Hairpin Bridge. In August, I read 7 books. I read A Twisted Love Story, which was for the book Troop, and is about this very, very toxic, kind of childish. When I was watching the live discussion about it, the book club discussion about it, they were talking about, like, it's very childish, the stuff that they do, even though they started dating, I think, in college, so young adult, and then up into, like, their late 20s, on and off they've dated, but it very much feels like a high school drama that they're still repeating in their 20s. Very toxic. I didn't hate the book. It was my first time reading from that author. I can't remember her name. Yeah, it was okay. It was fine. I read The Word is Murder for my in-person book club by Anthony Horowitz, I believe. Can you grab Jesper for me? So I got interrupted by sons, and it is very late and you shouldn't be sleeping anyways. I'm going to wrap up my wrap-up very quickly here. So I talked about The Word is Murder. It is very interesting. The author is the main character of the story. So it wasn't like the best thing I've ever read, but it was an interesting concept. And I bought it. It was on sale for like a few bucks at the bookstore. And then we ended up reading it for the book club. So that was really interesting. First time being part of the in-person book club. There is a sequel to it, but he is a very famous UK writer who does this like Alex Rider series or whatever for kids. So, and it is very much a classic murder mystery. It isn't super like suspenseful or thrilling, but it is just a murder mystery. I was reading it and the ABC Murders by Agatha Christie, and I had to like stop reading both of them at the same time because it was just too confusing, because they're very much murder mysteries. Like, that's it. And then I read Leech for the Besties Book Club over on Kayla's channel membership, and that one was weird and out of my comfort zone for sure. It was interesting about this doctor who their mind has traveled through like different doctors through the ages kind of thing, and they can recall the memories and the feelings and sensations of all of the people they've ever been. And it was really interesting. And there's this like this entity, this virus, this something that is infecting people and killing them, and this doctor has to figure out how to prevent it and stop it. Eat and Love Yourself, which was a comic for another online book club. I'm a part of too many book clubs and I need to get out of them. But that is with Books and Bonnie. She's amazing. Check her out. And she just started this new book club, and this was the first one we read. And it was a really quick graphic novel, like comic book type thing. And the artwork was beautiful. And it is about this girl who is a bit overweight and struggles with that and her body image. And she eats this like special chocolate bar thing. And it brings her back to times in her like childhood and stuff like that when she felt very much attacked or ashamed or judged or whatever by her parents and her body and her eating and things like that. And it's just talking about eat and love yourself and kind of healing those past wounds. And it was really good. And sadly, I missed the discussion for that one because of something. I can't remember why, but I wasn't able to be there. So I'm sorry to have missed that. And then I also read in August Book Lovers, and I finished the Love Con. So yeah, that is my summer wrap up. I read 19 books. That's it. Some people read that in a month. I read that in 3 months, but that's okay. It was a good reading month, or a good reading summer. So that is good. And that's what's important. And thank you for hanging out with me. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And comment down below. We'll have a discussion. What was the best book you read this summer? What was the worst book you read this summer, and what was a book you wish you had read this summer? And let me know about all your anticipated releases for the rest of the year, and I'll see you next time. Bye!